What is up, everybody? We are live. I am Scott Melker, aka the Wolf of All Streets. I am hoping and praying that we are all good to go here because, as I like to give my caveat at the beginning, I never know what I'm doing with the tech. So we're just doing our best over here and looking to improve each time. But it does appear that things are live and ready to go. Man, I'm really excited today. Election day. Finally going to hopefully get some answers soon, although tempering my expectations for when that might actually happen. But more, I'm excited to talk to my man, Big Cheds over here, who, has been trading for longer than most of you have probably been alive, kicked the shit out of cancer. The dude's just a legend. So, we don't get to see his face, but he's got a really, really nice bandana and glasses over there, keeping it low key, man. How are you today?
I'm doing good, man. I always love coming on and talking to you. I think you're an excellent contributor to this space. I think it's a big ecosystem. People kind of approach it in different ways. Some people add to it, some people take away. I like what you're doing. I don't know that I'm a legend. I'm just happy to be part of that ecosystem, and I'm just glad to be here hanging out, buddy.
You're a legend. I said it. It is what it is. So first, before we get started, I want to tell everybody, make sure to ask lots of questions. We definitely want to engage with you guys. Cheds and I can talk endlessly and probably get wildly off track. But we want to make sure that, the whole point of doing this is that people who are watching are actually interested and it adds value. Also, apparently, if you hit that thing with the thumb that's up and not the one with the thumb that's down, that's really good for us and people will like us more. And it will be very good for our self-worth and our egos. And I'll sleep better tonight knowing that I had thumbs ups. So we got that. So dude, what's up, man? What are you feeling right now? It's 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Election coverage will be coming in a couple hours. Stressful.
It's crazy. I was talking to my, and once again, thanks for having me. I was talking to one of my friends and, with politics, one thing that is different than sports, and many people treat it like sports. In sports, you have a winner and a loser, right? Who someone wins the game. Okay, you can't. Maybe you complain about the refs, but you lost the game. With politics, it's almost never. There's no real clear winner. With an election, you have a clear winner. It's one of those moments where you actually get to know, what a fact is, and the fact is who wins. And I am on pins and needles like the rest of us. I think it's big. I think if you want to be more dispassionate, you can say that whatever happens, we're going to get a clear market signal in terms of, where the market might move in certain sectors and such as that. But I think the way things are built up, I think we're going to see a little bit of chaos, and I'm kind of watching out for that.
When you talk chaos, are you talking markets or are you talking the real deal? Like, cities burning, windows breaking.
Well, I think you'll see civil unrest because people have one of things is right and one is wrong. Like people are usually self-selecting and they kind of go into these bubbles, and one of those groups has been lied to, and so we're going to kind of see that play out. And at the state of our politics here in the U.S., people you disagree with are not just people you disagree with; they're your enemy, right? So we're kind of in that type of an environment. So I think we'll see that with the market. You also have COVID now, like cresting. Not even cresting. Isn't that when you hit the top and turn over? Like you just have it.
Rising. Yeah,
it's rising. It's not even cresting yet. It's rising. So that's a huge headwind for the market. You have kind of scaled lockdowns coming around the world. Anybody would have to face that. So whoever was in power before, or whoever will be in power going forward. So you kind of have that to deal with. So yes, I think both in the market and in kind of like our day-to-day life, next couple of days, someone's not going to be happy, right? A lot of people aren't going to be happy. And if they think that they've been lied to and the other person's your enemy, the media's your enemy, or Trump's your enemy, like someone's going to be mad. And we're going to see that chaos. I think we're going to see it's just an over militarized type of political environment is how
it is. Because it's weird because I know we're roughly like of the same era, but when I was a kid, you kind of were mildly unhappy when your guy lost and you moved on with your life and you knew that it was going to be fine and you'd have your shot in a couple of years. And maybe that's still the case, honestly. You know what I mean? Like I even wrote a long thing today where I just kind of vomited a lot of words on paper about, hey, we're all going to be fine. Might suck for a while. You know what I mean? But like, I do believe that like social justice and just basically social progress is like a Dow Jones chart historically, right? It has huge dips, but it's always heading in the right direction. That doesn't help someone who's a victim during those times, unfortunately. But long term, I do believe that everything will work out fine and it'll be okay. But this is the most dangerous words. This time is different, but it is. It's very
different. Aren't you, if I try to remember, you have some connection to the Florida recount, right? Like you have a friend who, someone was a lawyer or something involved in that, right?
Well, yeah, I'm a Floridian, and yeah, I've had friends that are involved in it. And now actually my best friend, he's up for election today. My best friend, like from Pampers, literally like pictures of us in diapers in the crib together for my whole life, is the state attorney in Hillsborough County in Tampa.
So that's why you're not in jail. He's the reason you've been able to get away with everything, right?
I'm hoping he's going to be the future governor and I can get away with a lot more, or maybe a senator. That's the plan. But so yeah, man, I think that it's fair to say everything's on edge. Expect the unexpected. I'm hoping that we get like a strong Y2K vibe by the end and everybody's expecting the world to blow up, and then it's more clear cut than we're expecting and people kind of bitch and moan but go on about their lives. But I can't expect that. That's a hope, not an expectation. So like, I want to talk about, since it's probably what people are more interested in, like, what do you see with the market? I know that you told me sort of off camera before this that you are taking a very, very large bet on volatility.
Yeah, just in my bones. It doesn't make sense to me that we're not going to have volatility. You've got COVID out of control. If you look at it right now, it feels like the market's pricing in kind of a calm transition and an uncontested transition. And I don't see that happening. You have the market right now. You've got the COVID issue. You've got economies shutting down, whether it be state, federal, kind of global, different countries. You have things shutting down. So you have that economic headwind. And if you look at the potential scenarios, you've got broken Congress. You have stimulus now. We know it's not going to happen. So some of that was baked in. You already had some of the stimulus is coming, baked into the price, kind of leading into that. So that's kind of still there. Of the scenarios, like if Dems have a huge wave, I don't see Trump just saying, "Oh, hey, well, I tried my best." Like I don't see it, right? And if it's anywhere near close, he's going to say, "Listen, something doesn't feel right, something doesn't smell right." He's going to kind of instill doubt in the results. And then if he wins close, then you're going to have a lot of people kind of thinking that they cheated, right? So I don't really see a clean kind of off ramp over the next 48, 72 hours. So if you look at the chart, it looks like it has a good spot to bounce, even though, the VIX volatility is up quite a bit already. I think we really have potential for some type of event, some shenanigans. If I'm wrong, I'm totally okay with it. I'll accept it. I'll hit my loss. And then I'll take the signal that I now received and I'll move in that direction. You know what I mean? Like we're about to get
do you mind sharing your screen and pulling up your chart?
Yeah. And
if you don't want to, it's awesome.
No,
he totally did it. Cool. You did it like, I don't know how you did that from like your gangster lean back there. That was dope. You didn't even it looked like you're at a screen.
Oh, we're good. We're good, my friend. So
there we go.
So you've got so here's the thing with the UVXY. It's not like a supply and normal chart where like supply and demand will move it up. You've got kind of UVXY is kind of a derivative instrument of the VIX, which is the volatility. So I'll just start out with the VIX, and I'll also coach this with, I don't really fully understand this like market instrument, and everyone will tell you it's really complicated. It's something different. You have to be really careful with it. I just feel like volatility is coming, so this is where I'm kind of placing my bet. So the VIX is kind of the volatility, and so like a VIX of 30 or 35 basically means it's like over a 30-day period, the S&P is going to have like a 2%, 2.5% move. So the VIX is kind of a measure of the expected volatility of the S&P 500 options. Okay, so a lower VIX means lower volatility. So the higher VIX you get, the more you're expecting volatility with the S&P and kind of with the broader market. So it's a volatility index. It's often called the fear index. All right, so that's the VIX, and the VIX, the one I'm trading is UVXY, is a derivative of the VIX price. Okay, so it's really low. You've had a little bounce, when the market pulled back last week. You're kind of cooling off from that. You've filled the gap on the chart, even though you don't really use kind of chart metrics, but we're in a pretty good place where any kind of bounce here, I'm telling you, anything huge wave one way or another. I just don't see it being like a, hey, let's shake hands. Good race, sir. I'm ready to just sit. I think we're going to see some volatility through that. And if not, I'm going to close out the trade, hopefully learn a lesson, and then focus on the signals from whoever wins, right? If Biden wins, I'm going marijuana, I'm going solar.
Yeah, I'm
going
already in those.
Dude, bro, I'm telling you, I was in them like 20 minutes ago before I came on the air. So
yeah, that's how I'm approaching it too. Can you actually zoom that chart out a bit and show people what it looked like in March, just so they get some context of what
yeah, so here we go. So here's the UVXY. And here's March. It went from 11 up to 134. Okay, so here we are. Kind of, it looks like a similar basing. It's still if this wasn't UVXY, you'd just say, okay, I see a clear downtrend. It's got a downward channel. Blah blah blah. But this is an asymmetric risk and reward where you have the potential for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7x up, and like a smaller potential down.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of what I'm focused on. I could totally be wrong, and I'm ready for that. I'm ready to be like, I'm wrong and move on.
I don't think you're wrong. Also, I think a lot of people don't realize how important volatility is to traders, but how important it is if you're trading, especially options, to keep a track of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not on the radar of most crypto traders probably, but anyone who's like an institutional trader, hedge fund guys, they're watching volatility probably more than they're watching almost any other chart or indicator.
Well, we need volatility to trade. Otherwise, what are we doing except buying and selling at the same price? Volatility creates opportunity. You got the mean reversion, all that good stuff. And that's what I see you doing all the time with the RSI bull divergence, 1 hour, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I love that for sure. Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. I don't see how we don't get volatility now. I mean,
yeah.
It seems like
right.
the obvious bet. Doesn't mean you'll actually be right, but I mean, like you said, what's important is that it can only drop so far. Volatility, has a pretty definite floor, and we're pretty close to it.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't know why we're not pricing in more volatility. Perhaps I have something to learn. There's always a potential I'm not seeing something, but it just intuitively, like I said, it feels like we have volatility coming.
I mean, I was a bit surprised that the market's been up the past 2 days in general.
Right.
We're seeing the dollar continue to get smashed here over the last 2 days. Trying to dig into it, the only sort of cohesive argument I can make for the argument going up the last 2 days is that they're pricing in somewhat of a Biden win, which means more stimulus, which means markets rise. So I think that actually markets are concerned with the potential for stimulus more than they're concerned with who the president is going to be. At least that's the take that I get. And it's interesting. Like I pulled up, some statistics yesterday just because I was curious as to what it actually looks like when we see regime change or a flip of parties. And so I pulled up some numbers. I have them here. So these are the S&P growth during the first 4 years of the last 5 presidents in their first term. Obama, 66%, Clinton, 62%, George H.W. Bush, 45%, Trump, 44%, and of course, the historically bad and embarrassing G.W. Bush at a minus 15.8%, taking a surplus for the first time in decades in American history and running the entire country into the ground. But what's interesting there is those are all effectively, changes from Republican to Democrat because it flipped back and forth. We haven't really seen, since Reagan Bush, I guess we haven't seen, somebody, the vice president, win the next election or whatever. So the narrative that Biden is going to crash the market has no historical basis. The narrative that Trump will continue to rage has no real historical basis. Perhaps it will, but I think that it can go either way with either guy is really the point, right? But to have fear of the market because of who is elected is like, it's a day trader's concern, but it's not an investor or a swing trader's concern, I don't think. I mean,
right. It's secular bull market. That means long-term. That means multi-decade, multi-year. But I think kind of the big thing we need to add to this discussion, the ketchup on the hot dog is the Senate. Is it Republican or is it the same party or opposite party? Because that's going to really determine what goes on with the filibuster rules as is. The Senate is extra powerful now, having eliminated the filibuster. So all you really need is a straight majority. Okay, so that
Right.
means the Senate can actually has more power in some ways. And that, you know what I mean? Whoever controls it really controls it, right? It's not like the House where you can have these coalitions and you kind of need the other party, based on what your party does, all this factionalism. Senate is just, straight up and down the line. So it really depends, right? So let's say Biden gets in on a wave and people are thinking, okay, higher cap gains next year, you're going to see capital gains harvesting, right? Leading into
Right.
January. That's one potential
Selling
thesis.
losses. Right. Yeah.
But the
Taking
market's not going
losses.
to tank because corporations own both parties. If they didn't, they'd be idiots. They own both parties because they want to ensure their survival. That's why the market goes up no matter who's in power. It's just kind of how it goes up and what fashion it goes up over time, right? Unless it blows itself up again. Like I was watching Big Short last night for fun, and kind of unless it blows itself up again, right?
Yeah, it would have to be a pretty epic explosion, which I mean, that could be in the cards, but I think that that's party agnostic, and something that like I talk about all the time, like neither party can make the fiscally responsible claim anymore. Like I grew up where like if you really believed in smaller government, if you really believed on smaller spending, you voted for Reagan and George Bush, right? I mean, George Bush literally lost an election because he said no new taxes, and then he had the audacity to slightly raise taxes. And right now, that would be like the most innocuous lie that nobody would ever remember. But that swung an entire election from Bush to Clinton when their entire premise was fiscally responsible. Money printing has no party, right? These guys are going to print into infinity, regardless of which party is they have to. It's the only way to keep this party going.
I mean, we've kind of that decision's been made. We're kind of just accelerating it. And if to kind of buttress your point, if you look at the Tea Party movement, that was all about lower deficits and kind of fiscal kind of conservatism. But where were they during the Trump administration? They didn't exist. It was called an AstroTurf movement. It was created by corporations, Koch backed, all that good stuff. Get people together, and they actually made huge gains in the midterms, and they were a powerhouse, and they kept Obama in check. And if you look at what happened, the deficit was cut in 50% during the Obama administration because of sequester and because of Republicans refusing to let money get spent. So actually, through that kind of mixed government, you actually had a pretty good fiscal picture when you have the Dem president, Republican Congress. Okay. When it's one party or the other, they're going to spend. Okay. Republicans want to spend via tax cuts. It's called spending through the tax code. When you kind of have tax cuts that don't have offsets rather, it's a way of spending. It's spending through the tax code. You run up deficits. Then Dems get back in and they say, listen, we need to cut social programs rather than let's kind of reverse what we've done. So it's a theory if you overspend and then when Dems get in power, they kind of start to talk about spending again. So we're going to see that if Biden wins, you're going to see all these people, Jim Jordan, all these Kevin McCarthy, all these kind of quote unquote fiscal conservatives, Mark Meadows, are going to be talking about the deficit again. So that's why it's disingenuous. Both parties want to print when they're in power. When there's mixed government, you get the best kind of effects if you're a fiscal conservative.
Yep, that makes sense, but I just don't think that a fiscal anything exists either party.
Why would they? Why would they? Right? Who's checking their game, man? It's like they're kids in college without their parents. That's like because they can do what they want. Supreme Court's not going to check them. No one's checking them and do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to watch. Definitely checking over in the comments, make sure we're not missing anything. We got a couple legends here. Mocho, what's up, buddy? Tybalt, my favorite Shakespearean. Nick Core, what up? Bagsy, wow, you guys showed up, man. We appreciate that. That's awesome. So the first question here that I had, just interesting. It says, as a European and not able to vote in the U.S., how do you deal with having to vote for someone is not suited as president? I would make the argument that we don't know that. I mean, we know what one president is because he's had the job for 4 years. How you interpret the job he's done, I guess, is up to you. But and the next question: if Biden wins, he'll be outed as medically unfit to hold office, and then we'll have Harris Pelosi. That's a talking point.
It's not a serious comment,
right? And but I said this earlier on Twitter. Actually, I said I would literally drink the blood of a young doe every day and snort unicorn dust if I could have half the energy that these two guys have approaching 80 to be out on the campaign trail, zero sleep for weeks at a time, just crushing it, talking, voice gone. These guys are machines. There's no way that Biden can be viewed as an unfit if he can keep up with that schedule. I'm sorry. And yes, there are selective clips, and the guy has had a stutter. I mean, and listen, he's 80 years old. Like, I'm not doubting. And listen, this has nothing to do with my support for either one. I think it's impressive that both of them can keep this up. But like, the guy went through 2-hour debates on multiple occasions without any of those huge faux pas. He was off the cuff. I mean, yes, they know what they're going to talk about, but these guys can think. They're not morons. They're both medically fit. And so the narrative that it's like a socialist conspiracy or a communist conspiracy, I just don't think it holds water. I think it's just a political narrative, personally.
So a couple things. First of all, even if I think Trump's a bad president, or I give him credit for having the energy to do all those rallies, like you're saying. The guys, neither of them are young, and these guys, it's an incredible, takes a lot of effort to be in the campaign trail. So I'll give Trump credit for what he's doing. Obviously, Biden has a stutter, but it's a binary choice. We have to choose one of the two. They're arguably both old and senile, old white men. So we have to choose one of the two. That's our system. I think we need multi-party system. I think we need more public-funded campaigns rather than kind of corporation-funded campaigns. But that's not where we are. This is what we have. You have to choose one. The idea of them medically unfit, that's kind of a weird. That just tells me whoever wrote that consumes too much entertainment news. Okay, entertainment news is an industry where they want to keep you watching to sell commercials. Whether you're right or you're left, you're going to self-select the people who agree with you and tell you what you think, and then they're going to get you angry. So you keep watching. It's entertainment news. That's a fantasy. The Democrats want to survive. If they like got Biden out, they'd have a mutiny inside the Democratic Party if they did that. Okay, literally would have a mutiny. They'd fall apart and heading right into the midterms, and they would suffer historic losses. It's just not. These people need to stop watching opinion news, stop watching entertainment news. That's ridiculous. That's my thought on that.
I agree. And I was actually, as I do often when it's like a pivotal moment, I like to click back and forth between CNN and Fox. If
I can avoid it, I try to avoid both if possible, but I totally
I agree with that. I don't like either of them, and that's why I do it. But I mean, I was clicked over to Fox last night, and it was literally Hannity coming on, and he said, the Democrats are running scared. They're in full panic mode, trying to get extra this and that, and they know they're going to lose this and that. Then you're on the other side on CNN, and they're like, I mean, literally just the dead opposite, right? Trump adding campaign events, struggling. He's going to lose this and that, and nobody knows jack shit, right?
It's just bullshit entertainment, right? Go watch a movie instead, right? You're better off. They did studies where literally if you watch neither CNN nor Fox, like, you're more informed. Like, you know what I mean? The minute you start watching either of them,
you get dumber by the second. I mean, I could literally feel it was like that scene in Billy Madison, like, that was the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I'm dumber for, that's how I feel when I watch it. Bagsy just said we need less old men. And I think that's accurate. You know what I mean? Like, how is this the best that we have to offer? But it's an indictment of the system as a whole, right? I mean,
Well, it doesn't.
The other option was Bernie, who was like 80 himself. So
aren't people so much more complex? Like, we don't fall neatly into these categories of Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, like centrist. We're not neat. We're complex, and and we tend to end up arguing about the 20% or 15% that we disagree about, and that's how everything is structured. Like, most of us agree on most things. Right, left, center. Live freedoms, entertainment, good jobs, like all these things. And then the little things we just kind of argue about all the time, and it's like we become each other's enemies. Like, that's just sad, and that's our political system. So we got to break that down. We got to find a way to kind of mix it up. Ranked choice voting, gerrymander reforms. You kind of have just kind of more There's not enough swing seats. Like, if you look at Congress, there aren't enough swing seats. So when legislation is being made, there's really no way to kind of craft something that's a good path forward. Right. It's always something that one side likes and the other side undoes it when they get back in office, rather than working together. Yeah.
And there's such obvious fixes that are very basic. But the problem is that they're against the self-interest of the people who would have to legislate those fixes. Right. People say Nick Core, term limits are needed, obviously. Yeah. Right. Bit by the coin. There should be a cap on age. Probably, obviously. Like a politician should be a public servant, not a job position, and not an interview for a lobbying firm or a pharmaceutical company or an energy company, which is all these guys are, angling for something bigger. When they're done, it shouldn't be structured that way. You should run once. Like Congress should have term limits, but they shouldn't have to be up for re-election every 2 years. These guys, literally the second that they get into office, the first thing they do is call all their campaign contributors and start raising money for 2 years from now. They spend all their time raising money. They never spend time legislating. They never are boots on the ground. They're never talking to their constituents.
Yeah.
They have an election every 2 years to be reelected, and they should just have like 1 8-year term and go back to your lawyer job or whatever you were doing and leave us alone. You should be, at 65, you should be too old to be president. Yeah. They should not be able to raise money endlessly. So, term limits, age limits, and campaign finance reform, and you fix probably 90% of the system.
How about you just have the people, like in the House, you have them, how at the like State of Union, they started having them sit with their Democrat, Republican staggered seats, like just interacting with people who they're different than you and starting conversations, like simple things. I agree with what you said, but simple things, forcing people to just talk to each other, I think like the House is a big problem because you have 2-year terms and over 50% of the time is spent fundraising in a 2-year term. So that should be a 4-year term. House should be 4 years. Supreme Court should be maybe 15, 20-year term. You have to have limits on the Supreme Court. There's limits on driving. Like you can't drive when you're 110 or whatever, but you got to have limits on these things. It's not ageist. It's recognizing that our bodies fail, right? Our bodies are temporary. They're going to fail eventually. So at some point, you know what I mean? You got to have some kind of cutoff. So I agree with that. A potential age limit, maybe not too low, but simple reforms, man.
It's anecdotal, but if my devolvement from 20 to 43 is any indication of where I'll be at 85, then we need to cut it right at about 50.
Don't you ever look back at like every year I'll look back at myself like a year or two before and think, man, I was young. So when I'm 3 years from now, I'm looking back at this, I'll think it's always that. It's always yesterday's yesterday,
Yeah, but 3 years blends into 30 years because I don't feel like I was 22 years old so long ago, and like I graduated college like half my life ago.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I'm kind of the same way. So mentally it feels close. Physically it doesn't. It's a little bit different physically, perhaps. Especially the joints, right? It's those joints, it's your back, it's whatever,
Yeah, but then you need the joints to fix your back.
There you go.
Endless regress. So what do you think about so obviously you're betting on volatility, you're expecting volatility. Yeah. What are you thinking about Bitcoin in, I guess, is it floating freely? Are we decoupled, as people like to say, or do you think that it's going to ride whatever wave the market's ride?
I'll just kind of scribble with the chart a little bit and then kind of just talk about what I think real quick. So I think you just have to obviously start out by, there you go. You got to start out by just recognizing, obviously, we are like, it's an uptrend. All right. So like, okay, here's a daily chart. Yeah. It's kind of, you're an uptrend. You have kind of the head and shoulders recently. You broke down, back tested, kind of accelerated, broke through. We had this big impulse move. We've kind of been just churning here, kind of slowly bleeding up, Scott. We've been kind of, bleeding up and kind of just bumping up against the 14K. So you've got like chart things, then you've got kind of like macro factors. You've got kind of inflationary dollar, and you've got instability. And like, I just don't know. We don't know how like people are going to react to Bitcoin, right? Obviously, you've got major positive forces, PayPal, adoption. You have all these kind of things that are pushing it up. But if we look what happened in March, we see how potentially vulnerable it is. And we see how, and still some of these exchanges are fragile. What was it that happened with BitMEX, where because of BitMEX, it like went another 1,000 lower or something. So you have kind of, there's issues. There's the known knowns, the unknown unknowns. I guess to put it the way Donald Rumsfeld put one day, yes, it's bullish, but we don't know how it's going to react. So I'm expecting volatility, and I'm saying, hey, like, just be cool and be ready, is what I'm saying right now. Like give bulls the edge on any kind of jump ball type of situation, right? Give bulls the edge on any kind of jump ball type situation, but just be cool and be ready. Look at what happened in March. Forget about it. MA 200 breach. I mean, if we ever get, it's like anything that happened, it's buy the dip, right? Any kind of shenanigans, it's buy the dip, right? It's the super duper long-term uptrend. It's always the I wish I'd bought last month. I mean, that's how the story of crypto, right? Often, not always, but often, right? So if we get some craziness, we get rejected. There's riots in the streets. There's new economy shutting down. All these areas become like buy the dip areas. All these moving averages, especially the long term, the MA 200, that's like a multi-year type of like a buying point, that MA 200. So I mean, it's just so just kind of I would just kind of coach it that way, that like we have a bull market, give bulls the edge on a 50-50, but we have like that super type of unknown volatility type of environment. Okay.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But I think the major takeaway from that is buy the dip. Right.
Yeah.
Nothing about it is macro bearish in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be so thrilled if I started seeing 7, 6, 5, because I think we'd be in for a stretch of pain. But, we saw that macro dip on March 12th, right? I mean, first of all, I would contend that the 9,000 to 6,500, 7,000 part was legitimate risk off, right? That was, you couldn't sell a bond, right? So if you if you needed to sell something and get some cash, there were very few liquid assets at that point. So people sold their Bitcoin, but that triggered, there's just not even a contention about it anymore. I've talked on the podcast to so many like exchange owners, CEOs and stuff. BitMEX started triggering cascading losses and sent the price almost to zero. They had to turn it off when it was in the 3,000s, right? And that's pretty clear when you see that. Like it's crazy that day. I went to bed, price was like 6,500 or something, and I woke up and price was 6,000. So I was like, okay, right. We just kind of found a bottom. And then I checked the chart and realized that I had filled on a stink bid for months before at 4,000 and was up 50%.
Whoa,
like total
baby.
I didn't even, I didn't even process that it had gone down that far, but
yeah,
that's a bottom, right? You see that kind of bottom of 50%, it was the largest buying 12-hour candle. So that would be the kind of bottom I would look for again if we saw something epic drop like that. I just don't see it right now. But the point I was trying to make is, yes, we saw that crazy volatility, but like it bottomed so hard and so fast and it trickled back up. I mean, in the grand scheme of markets, we're, if you don't even count that, if you just count the 6,000 floor, like we're from 6,000 to 14,000 in a couple months.
I mean, look, demand's rising, right? Demand's rising. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. Demand is rising, adoption, people learning about it. I think people are also hedging, using it as a hedge against kind of global equities, anything that's going on there. So people are adding it as a hedge against, making it a percentage of their basket. I want crypto to be 5%, 10%, whatever they're doing. Regular Joes, regular people who 2 years ago wouldn't think about it. They're doing it.
I agree. I mean, I had Michael Saylor on the podcast that's coming out on Thursday, actually. That dude just like didn't shut up for 90 minutes. And it was just like schooling me on why we needed Bitcoin. Most of it was about like mechanical and theoretical energy and monetary energy and some shit I just didn't understand, but I nodded because I didn't want to look dumb in front of a billionaire. But I mean, he broke it down and he had the balls to do it, right? He 500 million of MicroStrategy's money, a quarter of their cash reserve, and 300 million of his own money, right? So his balls are on the table. But his contention was that like you need 10 more billionaires like him to just say, listen, I did it. Like I bought it. You know what I mean? Like not hide, because he's like, they did buy it. They're just not telling you. Basically, he's like, because they don't want to get hacked or like have the attention.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, right? Exactly. So there's
but like Nick Core just said, charts don't even do it justice on how bullish we are, and I couldn't agree with that more. I hate being like the bull tard in the room, but like it's all happening, right? Every narrative, every ridiculous thing that they called us stupid and they called us crazy and they told us we were fucking morons. Every single one of those things exists right now in this market. We have money printing. We have the Fed basically saying they're going to lift their foot off. They're going to put their foot on the gas for inflation. Have at it. Don't care. Right. We have institutional money coming in, the Paul Tudor Jones, JP Morgan launched their fucking coin this week. Nobody gives a shit. News like that. Like we talked about backed for a year and a half and the market would move on the very mention of it. And now you have these actually huge things and we have a mature market that doesn't swing like a pendulum every time we see the word Bitcoin in the mainstream media. So like we have a mature market now and all the things we talked about are actually happening. You mentioned PayPal.
Yeah.
Huge. I don't give a shit if you can't send your money off PayPal. Okay, that's fine. We all care about Bitcoin. We want to hold our keys. My mom doesn't give a shit about that. She just like, or like your average person who doesn't think about Bitcoin, they're perfectly happy to buy it and hold it in PayPal. It's fine. They don't care. It's fine. We need those people. This is how we get rich.
I think it's right. I think you have to. A lot of people noticed, like how quiet this kind of bull acceleration has been. This kind of steady bleed up because it was a media frenzy, back in that 20K run, and as we approached that really important level and actually breached, we breached that macro high or low, the July 19 high. Just recently, it's just really quiet out there.
10.5, yeah.
No, not the 10.5, but the 11.390 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
It's just the tip, so to speak. But we technically did break it. We technically did break the lower high. We haven't captured it. I wouldn't argue we've captured it by any means. I think we're still at that level, which is what makes potentially a breakdown from here have a little more significant. It's one of those spots where, like, if Bitcoin's pulled down for other reasons, it will look like it's because it was rejected here. Do you see what I'm saying? It gets right, not because it's a real like an issue where there's an imbalance in supply and demand and people start selling, but because of outside factors, it would make the chart look more bearish to reject right here, than like a quick 14.5 run and then boom,
Yeah, so. I would have been pretty surprised to see it just blast through 13.8, which I saw as stream. I mean, yeah, it sucks a little bit that like the monthly closed right at it, so that you get this like double top narrative, which is so absurd. Like we'd have to be below 3,600 to confirm a double top at this point with the swing low between. Actually, I'm going to pull up a chart real quick. I'm just going to pull up my like macro Bitcoin chart because I think everything below high time frames at this point is complete noise. I really do. Like I love doing analysis and everything, but can you see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Right. This is my monthly chart. Okay. So everybody obviously sees this tiniest little wick right here and says bearish SFP, we're going to hell. But first of all, that wouldn't matter unless this like ends up being a big red candle or something to confirm that that's rejection. But like the way that this has played the key levels is kind of like absurd to me. You have this, we got back to 92.43 here after this big dip. I mean, I talk about this all the time. Every single candle except for this one has like interacted with it meaningfully for, well over a year, basically, right? Like these candles both had the wick. These are both clearly rejected here, rejected, perfect wick. So we cleared that, took care of it, right? And finally a huge one. Then you have 10.540, which was like finally a higher high on a higher time frame. And then we had three candles that all tested it and closed above, and a huge Chad candle that shoots right to the next one. But like this does not look like rejection. This looks like consolidation below resistance to me. Like,
that candle? That's not even a candle yet. It doesn't exist, right? It's 27 days to go, right?
Right. Of course. I'm just saying, like, it's not like this dumped right away in the first few days of the month and whatever. And then, I mean, that's it. There's never been a candle that's closed higher than this blue line. This is your next resistance. So like, I just don't like get any bearish vibes here, unless, of course, like you said, we have some sort of like crazy risk off environment and the world burns or whatever.
Well, it depends on your horizon, Scott. If you say you're bearish, is it because you think we need to test 12K? I mean, that's reasonable. Or do you think it's like it's a hoax and it's a fake and it's going to zero? That's a different kind of bear, right? It really, I think.
I want to hear that. Everybody yell at me how it's going to zero so I can buy more.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to get interested in alts only because people are so distraught.
That's what you want to see. You want to be buying things. I like your stink bid. I think that's a great lesson in kind of being thrifty. And I do like the idea of buying and scaling into positions kind of when everyone else is showing a lot of pain, a lot of blood. So I think for those watching, hit that thumbs up button, by the way. You want to be cognizant of the blood. When there's pain, that's when you want to be buying, right?
Yeah, always. It's just really scary to do it with alts. But like, I
Yeah.
mean, listen, this is not the highest that alts will ever trade at again. Like they're going to be higher than this, whether it's in a month or 6 months or a
Yeah.
year or in 3 days. I don't know, but this is not the lowest that alts will ever trade. We've seen this before.
I mean, where they are now, it'd be hard to think these levels aren't tested on a bunch of them, but there's plenty that you would think maybe are just going to kind of fade away. So I really think it's case by case. But I think the ones that are liquid and still have interest and any kind of a reasonable weekly, monthly chart, they'll still test, still come back. Like if you think of the whole chart as Bollinger Band, then maybe they'll hit that middle Bollinger again at some point. So yeah, there's still a little bit of a life in a lot of them. But some are just look terrible. You definitely don't want to touch them. But with Bitcoin, but if it like say it goes to 20K and then it starts to cool off, money will flow into alts. So there'll be a point where that kind of paradigm shift there's where the railroad track, right? There'll be a point where there'll be a turn off and people can kind of notice that. We'll see that in the market. And then you having kind of already started to scale in, you might be well positioned for that.
I started taking a bunch of alt positions on Friday. A few of them I took with leverage, which was a mistake. So I ended up exiting those. But like, I don't really see anything wrong. Like if there's something, a position you're passionate about, want to throw like 10% of what you want your total position to look like into it right now and be willing to watch that drop.
Yeah.
I mean, I as much as I trade, like I only trade with roughly 15 to 25% of my stack if I'm really risk on. So like I'm always dollar cost averaging into the few things that I like, namely Bitcoin.
Well, let me ask you, because I think I think when you're talking about how much percent, it's also like how many plays you're doing. Because if you're just doing a couple, it's good. You can focus on them. And I think there's a danger.
I'm not doing a ton. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
The biggest fallacy of risk management in crypto is the people who say I only risk 1% of my portfolio on a position, then take 30 positions.
Right. They just buy them and then just hit refresh like, every day.
If you're in 30 of them with a stop loss at 1%, and there's the systematic risk there of any Bitcoin move wrecks all 30 at the exact same time, you've effectively just risked 30% of your portfolio.
But there are schools of thought, though, that you want to have that basket of risk, a diversified basket of risky assets. So that's actually not, you could argue, I could make the other side that's actually not a bad strategy if you properly use your stop loss, expecting a certain amount of volatility, put 10, 15%, so if you, that's the theory that one of those will pay off. It's like with a business venture, right? People invest, the sharks or whatever. It's like if one of them, pays off, it pays for the other 10, that's the theory behind it. So
I can see it. That's definitely the 2017 altcoin mentality.
Yeah.
Put some money into 100 coins and accept that 98 of them are going to zero and 2 of them will pay for everything. I think that's also been that's somewhat been for a lot of people like getting involved in the pre-sales or public sales this year is like, hey, one of them pops off for 100x. I can do 50 of these things and watch them turn to dust. And I think that's also the attitude that you have to sort of take if you're trading on Uniswap where you don't even have a stop loss, right? I mean, obviously, I think that trend is kind of reached the floor at this moment, but there's a lot of people who are willing to buy 10 food coins and hope that one of them just went bananas and not give a shit if 9 of them turned into banana peels.
Well, look, it's all about can you find someone to buy it from you at a higher price. I mean, just you want to jump on the train before it hits that last station, and that's kind of the name of the game. And that's what makes a market,
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to read the comments over here. Mocho's making fun of us. Oh, he says a Bitcoin maxi and a Tether maxi also. Can't argue with that. I mean, I'm now a USDC maxi. I never used to touch stable coins, but getting 9 to 10% on them sitting in a Celsius or Voyager and just like watching it grow, it's amazing. That's like call DeFi whatever you want, say whatever you want about all of this. Like to me, the real DeFi is I can actually get yield with no minimal risk. There's counterparty risk, of course, in anything, but I believe there's counterparty risk in my bank as well. But like with minimal risk, just sitting on one of these platforms, gaining 9.5, 10%.
It's unbelievable.
Those are epic gains. People don't realize that if you took if you had 100 grand, I know most people don't have 100 grand, but if you're in your 20s and you had 100 grand and you put it into USDC on one of these, you will be richer than you know what to fucking do with by the time you're 50 or 60, doing literally nothing. You will not work.
A lot of assumptions. A lot of assumption there. Obviously, a 30
I'm saying if right, but when we were kids, you took dollars and you put them in a savings account and you make
you got 8%, right? 10%, right? Oh my God.
Given my parents, like our mortgage was like 14% in the 80s or something. So there's a negative flip side to that.
I think you're raising a really interesting point. Because of the ecosystem, there's a lot of different ways to play it. You can swing, you can leverage, you can do all these things. And then there's like your yield farming, and there's different ways to yield farm, and there's different ways to, so it's really interesting to see all the different ways people are trying to grow this whole crypto ecosystem, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the innovation is awesome. Like, I think it's unfortunate how it kind of has gone down, but predictable with a lot of the DeFi stuff. But a lot of phoenixes will rise from the ashes. I don't think it'll be like yams or sushis or whatever ever people were trading. But dude, I love that bull behind you, by the way. Can we talk about that?
What's up? Yeah.
I love that silver bull. I want
one. So that was from my boy Big Chonas at Big Chonas on Twitter. And he's like, here you go. And I'm like, I'm in it. I'm using it. You know, people love it. So I definitely thank him for that.
Thing is awesome. I want one of those.
It's pretty heavy, dude. It actually fell and hit me on the head once. So, because I had like a reaction where I like moved my chair back. I was surprised at something, hit me in the head. So, got to be careful with it.
Yeah, it has huge balls.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had him right in my.
I mean, they're right there. It's like over your shoulder. I was looking at the head, and then happens.
Yeah, man, that's the name of the game. You got to have balls in this game. That's the thing. There's no, you know, you can't be afraid to lose money. When you become risk averse is when you lose more money. You know,
a bull with huge balls. That's what you gotta be if you want
to. Is that not true? I mean, it's a pretty apt metaphor, right?
It is. So, like, how much do you consider correlation or inverse correlation or any of those things when you're trading Bitcoin? I'm curious. Do you look at
the dollar and stuff?
Do you look at like an SPX chart or DXY chart and consider it when you're trading?
Well, there's moments
to be clear, so it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, so there's moments in time where it seems like they're correlated, and then there's moments in time where it clearly not. I feel like now we're not, but there have been moments in time where like for a week or a couple weeks, there was a correlation. So in that time and space, I was probably doing that. But you know, I think Bitcoin is the boat that makes the wave, you know, in the ocean, and that's kind of how I think about things. That's kind of the foundation of my thinking. Is everything else needs to react to Bitcoin. Right? Bitcoin necessarily isn't reacting to everything else as much. So for the most part, I don't believe it to be correlated. To take that a different way, if there's something that's going to affect the SPY, it also does have a chance to affect, you know, Bitcoin, panic, uncertainty, or stimulus. Stimulus comes, people have money in their pocket. Bitcoin's probably going to go up. You know, SPY is probably, you know.
I think stimulus, you know, is definitely the boat that rising tide that will float all boats. I mean, I think the inverse correlation with, I'm going to share my screen again, actually, just because I have this pulled up. I think the inverse correlation with the dollar is a lot more compelling than any correlation with markets. I mean, blue is Bitcoin. Black here is DXY. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the opposing peaks and valleys of the price action between those. I mean, this is the SPX in red. Yeah, okay. So like we had this major dump in March. I can't even see my screen here. So yeah, everything kind of went down. These are, by the way, everything's indexed to 100 on this chart to make it sort of apples to apples. And I mean, you know, look what Bitcoin's doing now versus the stock market and dollar. So like, I hate the correlation argument. I think the best macro argument for Bitcoin is the idiosyncratic risk, the fact that it travels differently and that you can have it sort of what you were saying earlier, like the basket argument that you should have a basket of risky assets. Even if you think they're going to go down, they offer you idiosyncratic risk. So you want something that will move freely when everything else dumps together, right? I still think that is Bitcoin, and I just don't see the correlation with the stock market. Yes, it happened for a while. It was very temporary, but you know, by any mathematical definition of correlation, they never reached like higher than 0.58, which in itself is only moderately correlated. But I think over like the last 10 years, it's 0.16 or something. It's like literally not correlated by, by Markowitz modern portfolio theory or any definition.
I think it's about like who's playing them. When I think about correlation, I think about the correlation of the participant. It's the Robinhood traders, it's the PayPal people, it's the people with cash who are trying to kind of put that money to work. And so there's a correlation there vis-a-vis like a stimulus where everyone has cash. So when I kind of think about it, I think everything for me kind of like goes back to the person, the human level, and like what that interaction is. So, like in that sense, I see them kind of having a correlation through retail having money, all
I
that.
agree with that. If people have money, they're going to buy stuff,
Yeah.
and we know that younger people are not going to buy, they might buy one of 5 or 6 stocks, but in general, they're more compelled, obviously, to buy Bitcoin. I don't really think that the election is going to have any discernible effect on the crypto market, but what do I know?
Yeah, I mean the election and Bitcoin, volatility will affect Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's kind of, I think regulation has the potential to affect Bitcoin, but there's it's got things going for it which can't be changed. It's got the limited supply, right? The finite supply, and that's going to kind of always push Bitcoin higher, and adoption is going to push it higher. Regulation and banking and kind of the taxes, all those things can kind of maybe affect it in how we interact with it and how we kind of ride it, how we trade it, we swing it, what we do with it. But the election, it will affect it because when you get your stimulus and how much and kind of all that,
I don't feel stimulated. I don't feel
bro,
stimulated
I'm just like, oh, it's crazy. It's like, it's like Super Bowl fourth quarter, like last drive, but it's like 5 of them at the same time. It's, it's not just one Super Bowl. It's like 5 Super Bowls at once. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, we've literally been arguing this shit for 4 years.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy making. It's made a lot of people crazy, brother, and when we see it where we turn on each other, you turn to your family. You can't do that. We have to find ways to kind of understand each other and where we're coming from.
Yeah. And somebody just asked, limited supply, isn't that every crypto? I would say definitely not.
That's the opposite of every crypto. That's what makes Bitcoin. Yeah.
That's what makes Bitcoin special. Yeah.
Yes. It makes it. That's the king. Bitcoin's the king, my friend.
Well, somebody said the effect of the election will show on crypto when the results are announced. Just wait. That was Bobby. Bobby, feel free to tell me while we're still talking what you think that definitive result will be, because I'm curious as to what you think. And guys, yeah, feel free to keep asking questions for sure. And Cheds, I didn't even ask you what time you need to be done, but if ever you need to,
The more time I talk to you, the less time I'm just watching the news or whatever. Today's a crazy day where I'm just I'm chilling for a little bit. Yeah, definitely chill for a little bit,
Yeah, I mean, I've made a pact with myself to ignore the news completely until fully tonight. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm gonna pick up my kids, gonna have dinner, or maybe I'll try to work out or something. Then I'll turn it on at 8 or 9 o'clock when they're actually counting votes and they're not just speaking in opinion and theory. I can't stand it. I can't stand watching it. It's just nonstop, ludicrous, stupid today, analysis. Just show me the numbers.
Right. I have no interest in reading an opinion piece that came out today predicting who's going to win. I'm just going to wait and find out. Enough of the speculation, right? I'm interested in. I scan Twitter, look for updates on people standing in line and any problems with voting, and that's interesting to me. And kind of what the campaigns are saying to each other. I mean, that's kind of interesting because I follow certain reporters and all that. But I don't want to hear a friggin' opinion,
If there's a day to sit and watch the news, it's today. Don't get me wrong. I just know myself, and I want to still have a productive day. And I don't think that I'll get anything that will impact my feeling or life out of it, except for maybe some angst and stress, which, I'm definitely trying to avoid here. He said, a few alts are good, most are trash. Cool. All right. Well,
I think we're going to see, it's going to be a day. Look, we're going to have a day of ripping and then a day of healing. I feel like there's going to be kind of turbulence, which we're going to have to, it's like a kidney stone. We're going to have to pass it. It's going to be painful, but it's going to have to pass. You know what I mean? There's no way this resolves without some agita, without some kind of distress. It's just not how it's set up. We're not set up for discourse. We're not set up to politely disagree. It's like when your opponent should be locked up, right? I mean, how do you kind of walk away from that? How do you de-escalate from that? So,
I don't know. I don't know what the path forward is. Like, I don't see. It's not like there's a magic bullet here where one of these people wins and everyone's like, okay, fine, we're healed.
Yeah, what does that look like? I don't know. I can't figure a scenario where it's like everyone's like, all right, cool.
I mean, I'm talking to people that I know, like, it's anecdotal, but locally, and like my Republican friends, and I have Republican friends. I really do. They're not, most of them aren't like huge Trumpers, but they're voting for Trump for whatever, and I get that for them. But like, they think that if Trump wins, American cities burn. We kind of touched on this earlier, the whole Antifa narrative and all that. And then I have people who like are very liberal and, who think that the Trump army is going to march down the street and kill us all if Biden wins. I'm like, I live in like suburban Gainesville, Florida at this point in my life. I spent 20 years in cities. I'd be a little concerned, but like, I'm not really worried in my small town that like an army of protesters on either side is coming to get me. I'm just not, listen, you got to be prepared for anything. I get that. But like, it's interesting to hear both sides just have this assumption the other side is like the violent side that's going to go crazy.
Well, that's because the way the opinion news is set up is you caricature the other side. It's all about a caricature. You know what I mean? It's like when you go to the park and there's a guy who's drawing it for you, he draws it for you, and all of a sudden your nose is bigger, your ears are bigger. It kind of looks like you, but it's a caricature, right? It's the same thing where we say that, the Dems can point to militia storming the state house, and the Republicans can point to, Portland, riots. Oregon, all that good stuff. So it's like if that's what you hear, and then that forms the basis of everything else, the lens through which you see everything else about your political opponents, that's how it's going to be. It's through a caricature, rather than recognizing that you have a loud minority on either side, right? It's like in nature, where these animals, the peacock effect. What you do, you make yourself seem bigger, bigger than you are, right? If you run into a bear, you try to stand tall or whatever, right? It's the same thing where you do that. You make your opponent into a caricature. So they're scary. It's all about this emotional, this fear, the psychological warfare. It freaking drives me crazy. It's so cynical. It's so dishonest. And it's worn me down a little bit, just to be honest.
Yeah, me too. But then I get into the issue of like not wanting to participate in it. Of course, I know I have to vote. You got to choose a side. Don't get me wrong. I'm not encouraging that, but like, neither of these sides remotely represent everything that makes me, and you used to be able, in good conscience, vote for the things that were important to you, but know that the other side would come somewhere in the middle. Now it's like, I mean, like if you're hardcore pro-life, for example, like you are going to be a Republican, even if you disagree with every single thing that they believe. If you're, pro-gay marriage and that's your thing, you're going to be a Democrat no matter what. And even if everything else. So like now I think it's dumbed down to people, like they choose their issue, right? You become a one issue voter, but then you like have this cognitive dissonance where you force yourself to agree with all the other absurd bullshit of that party just because you don't want to have to question your own feelings or whatever. Nobody fits into one of these two baskets. Nobody on earth. And if you do, you're basically just like a victim of media talking points, and I really believe you've effectively just been brainwashed at this point. If you can, if you just like vomit the exact talking points that the party says over and over again about every single issue, every person is more complex than that.
Yeah, I mean, you're dead on. I would agree with everything you said. It's pure tribalism. If an issue arises, you have to first know how your party leaders think before you can render an opinion, right? Well, how do you feel about this? Well, what does Trump think? Okay, fine, that's what I agree with. Or how does AOC think? Okay, that's what I agree with. It's not about policy, and this boils down to politics. It's not about policy. It's about winning. If you want to understand politics, you have to start there. That's the starting point, and then you work out. It's about winning. So it's not about being right or wrong. It's about winning, and it's about tribalism and convincing the other people that they're the bad ones. The people who are pro-life, they took a gamble and it paid off. He grabbed genitals, but he got them Supreme Court justices. They made their bargain, and you'd say, well played. Hats off to you. They got it done, man. So it is what it is.
Nuts. the Joe Biden is creepy and touches people when you have a president. And this is it's not a judgment. Again, it's just cognitive dissonance. The guy literally said, grab him by, like he admitted to sexual assault. Yeah. And then I know people who like think that the problem with Biden is that he might sexually assault people.
I had a friend on Facebook ask me if I'd like comfortable leaving my kid alone with Joe. And I said, of course. And she said, like, that's why women are better parents than men. And I'm like, holy shit, you are fucked up.
I wouldn't leave my kid alone. I mean, I don't want to leave my kid
alone. I mean, the caricature of Joe to think yes. that, right? You know, it comes down to Trump, his New York Idol, whatever, Ed Koch, not Ed Koch, was it Ed Koch?
Ed Koch, yeah, Koch,
yeah.
Koch, yeah.
And it's, if you look at the Karl Rove playbook, play number 3 is you accuse your opponent of your own weakness.
Of course.
So everything Trump is a master magician. Trump, for everything else you say about him, he is an all-time great entertainer. He's an all-time great showman. He's charismatic. He's all-time great in many of these categories, okay? I think he's not a great president. I don't think he ever wanted to be president. I don't think he ever took it seriously. He didn't take COVID seriously. That's why he's probably going to lose. But his playbook is to accuse other people of his own weakness. He does it all the time. Anytime you see him attacking Biden on taxes, attacking him on calling him xenophobic, everything he'll attack him on, it's all projection. Right, I have a psychology degree, so I see everything through that lens. Other people have noticed that as well. I'm not breaking new ground here. But if you notice what Trump does, anytime he's attacking someone on something, it's something that he himself has done. It's a guilty conscience. It's misdirection. It's everything he does, and he's brilliant at it. And most of the time, he gets away with it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, for sure. We have interesting. BitBytecoin said the problem is neither side represents the majority. Most people are left or right leaning moderate, not the extreme views that are touted in the news. I think that's like the key point here. You said it right at the beginning. I mean, funny. I had Brock Pierce on the podcast, and he gave this sort of like diatribe at the beginning about like his platform and what it was, and he got done after like 10 minutes. I said, I literally don't think there's a single person who would disagree with anything you just said. Like,
well, we're 80%,
core
right?
Values. It's like we just all want to like be safe. We want to know that like we're going to be taken care of. We want to know that we can take care of our kids. Like there's just basic human decency and basic human things, and it all gets, just completely corrupted by being pulled further to either side. I think BitBytecoin that just nails it. I mean, almost everybody's a moderate.
That's why you need ranked choice voting. Works with that. You need redistrict reform. You need to have more moderates in Congress because you have ideological forces that will end up controlling just a whole district for 10 years, 20 years. And you have people drawing a map in a certain way such that a minority will control a majority of the people. So you don't have equal representation. I'm not talking about abolishing the electoral college. So I think you have to have some balance. I think there's arguments for and against it, but I'm not someone who says abolish the electoral college. What I think we need to do is have finance reform. If you're going to have money put it into politics, we need to know disclosure. Where did it come from? The people need to know. It's like with the market, the price absorbs all known information. So the same thing should be applied here. If you're going to invest in a campaign, we need to know where the money came from. We as voters deserve to know. I'm not saying limit how much money, but I'm saying tell me where it came from so I can decide. I can make my own judgment, right? We need that. We need redistricting, ranked choice voting, campaign finance reform, and we need ballot access measures because it's hard to get on the ballot in 50 states. That's why independents have such trouble. You don't meet a polling threshold for the debate. You don't meet ballot thresholds. You have to have a certain number of signatures. So we need to kind of lower the threshold to get on the ballot. And because the Democrats and Republicans are private parties, they've kind of structured it in such a way that you can't have competitors come along. So that's our system, right? How are we going to approach that and address that going forward? We'll see. But power to the people, man.
Yeah, man, I agree. And somebody's heading to the polls right now. He just said, but the Democrats blaming Russia and Ukraine on Trump is different at Cheds. That was a question, I think.
Yeah, I think you have to look. I think it's important to try to, whatever your stance is, I think we have to look at what we know. And we know from the IG report, the Inspector General's report, we know from the Bipartisan Senate report, and we know from the Mueller report, some things that no one can argue with. That Russia interfered with our election with a preference of having candidate Trump get elected. So that's, no one can dispute that.
Nobody disputes that. Right.
So the question is, do people use that as an excuse to explain everything? I mean, that's more debatable, but we know what Russia did. We know they tried to get Trump elected, and we know that the Trump campaign was willing to receive some help. Okay. From there, it's where do you draw the line between what's moral and what's legal? I'll leave that up to the lawyers. But my problem is with people who try to say, oh, Russia didn't hack us and Russia didn't try to get Trump elected, because we know they did. So if we can't agree on that, I'm probably not going to spend much more time discussing it with you further. I think we have to agree on what we actually know. Bipartisan Senate report, the IG report, and the Mueller report. They establish certain things, right? I'm not saying there was collusion. I'm not saying there were any of those things. I'm saying that Russia tried to get Trump elected and they accepted that help. That's what we know. From there, we can disagree from there. And that's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, but try not to take us any further down that rabbit hole, because it's been it's been hashed out back and forth so many times.
It's too much. It's enough. It's baked in. It's baked in.
It's not worth discussing something that there's gonna be no agreement on. In the middle.
It's like
who shot JFK? Kind of up against it here a little bit with time, man. Just parting thoughts. What are you thinking? I mean, how are you gonna spend the rest of your day?
Man, I'm gonna try to get a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of exercise, just to get my blood pumping. I have some wine, but I'm gonna wait till later because I feel like I'll probably be up all night. So I'm gonna try to pace myself and watch the market close, sweat the close here. Maybe do some shit posting on Twitter. Maybe watch some videos and kind of just I might hang out with my family. I might spend time with the family too. Oh yeah, them.
Go to bed early, so it's my family time is somewhat minimized. So yeah. I mean, I think I'm gonna do the same. I really don't think I'm gonna stay up late, of course, because who won't? But I don't think we're gonna have resolution tonight.
I think actually I wouldn't be surprised 3 a.m. That's when it was called in 16. I just don't know. It's like when you try to think what's going to happen, you have to ask yourself. I go to another level of consciousness where I say, is this what I want to happen? Am I projecting what I want to happen? So how do you separate what you think is going to happen from what you want to happen? That's really hard to do. So we'll see, bro.
Key to being a good trader, though. Really, if anything, good traders should be the best at weathering these storms, man. Because we have the mentality, hopefully, of being able to separate what we think will happen, but accepting that we're wrong and seeing it the other way.
Knowing how to recognize when you're wrong, knowing how to recognize the point at which you're wrong. I mean, that's the kit and the caboodle right there, right?
Man,
when the trade, right?
Yeah, the last 4 years, I think, have. If there's a massive silver lining over the mayhem, it's that I really think I've become so much more objective. I think that I can really view anything from two sides. That's a result of going from being an emotional, horrid trader to being a sort of a robotic good trader, which happened in the last 4 years really for me. But also just like I said, when we were younger, it wasn't politics. You could float between the two and you could sort of be in the middle and you could make sense and you could have a debate. Seeing it so polarized and broken, you kind of can't take a firm stance on either side. Sometimes you just can opt out and say, this is ridiculous. I think it gives you an ability to look at things through a more just kind of ambivalent and objective filter, and with a little less. Doesn't make you any less passionate about it. It just I didn't used to question every single thing that I read. Now I question literally. I feel like it's made me such a critical thinker because I just can't accept anything that's told to me.
It's like once you blow your mind, you can't put it back together.
So true.
If you've ever done mushrooms, you probably understand that too. And it's the act of actually doing that and rebuilding in a more kind of aware state of mind. So that's the challenge. Ignorance is bliss. I believe it thoroughly. The more you know, the more you kind of question what you don't know, what you do know. Emotion management, risk management. I think serenity, recognizing what you can control and not control, kind of is a good starting point, a good basis for all of that. And if you can really just what's in front of you, if you can handle that, and if you can kind of be kind to yourself too, those are big things that kind of help you along the way.
Awesome, man. I think that's good parting words. I know we'll be in touch through those shit posts throughout the night. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Again, click that thumbs up thing. I will be back on again at 2:00 tomorrow. And I have a feeling it's going to be an interesting time. I'll be alone. But man, thank you for taking the time. You're awesome, man. Nothing but respect. I love having these conversations, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Now I have to figure out how to turn the thing off.
Peace out.
Think we're done. Thank you, man.